3 minutes after.
6:04.
Good evening. My name's Tom Riome, Chairman of the Public Works Committee. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, January 8th, 2019. We're in the first floor conference room at City Hall. And with that, we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves.
Jay Catnaugh, Alderman.
Joe Terry, Director of Public Works.
Jay Blazer, Alderman.
Joe Eichstead, City Engineer.
Lee Graff, Alderperson.
Thad Kubaschek, Alderperson Committee Member.
Thank you. Item 2, review the DPW report.
Okay, so those that have been on the committee before may recognize that the January report, I try to include highlights from the previous year activities. And I would like to go through this month just because our staff has accomplished a lot and we've gotten a lot of work done. So for your benefit and that of the public that might be watching, I'd like to go through this. So with the airport, the construction of runway 1230 was complete. The taxiway B East is complete. The resurfacing of runway 220 is complete. New runway lights, edge lights, threshold lights, runway end lights, signage, and taxiway navigation lights have been completed. Construction has started on the apron expansion. So there's been some stormwater, some lighting, basin paving, taxiway work. That work is scheduled to be completed this spring. The planning and design for taxiway A is complete, and that project has been let, and construction on that will commence in the spring of 2019. And then the planning and design for a hangar, transient hangar, has been started, and the city or the airport and the airport commission has received a substantial grant from the state for that project as well. So the airport, there's been a ton of activity out there, both flight activity and improvements to upgrade that. Hosted nearly 800 transient aircraft during the Gulf season. That's a lot of aircrafts. Exceeded the budget estimates by approximately $60,000 in revenues. Operating expenses were within budget, and the fuel sales for 2018 were nearly double from 2017. So the airport has been busy, and our airport administrator out there and his staff have been doing a good job.
Joe, do we want to segregate if we got questions or wait till you're completely done with it?
Your choice.
As far as the airport, can you, I guess, elaborate in terms of if we've got a surplus or we've got higher revenues? Is that an enterprise fund? Is that something where those funds are going to stay with that?
They stay with the airport. Correct. Yes. So the airport commission maintains their own budget. They generally will roll those funds and carry them similar to what the city does, carry them as a surplus and use those for needed maintenance projects and things like that. And so the requests for funding from the member municipalities has stayed fairly level. And when they operate under budget, you know, that those funds are, you know, they're available in a reserve account, basically.
Sure, thank you.
Yep. For buildings and grounds, the planning and construction of the new garden area patio at the Centralia Center is well underway. That's been a combination effort between volunteers and city staff. The painting of the entrances and the new sign at Centralia is complete. If you haven't looked at it, or if you had seen it prior to it being updated, it was in need of it. The preparation of the old human services area for the community theater is complete. Phase 1 development at the zoo is underway. The design is complete for that. At the zoo, moving the garage from the zoo location, it was kind of on the north center part of the zoo there, over towards the west side lift station is complete. New sign and fencing has been installed at the petting zoo. The generator installation projects at the east and west fire stations and City Hall are nearly complete. There's still some work to finish up there. The interior bathroom refurbishment at Robinson Park was complete. That turned out really well. There were exterior doors that needed to be replaced at the city garage. Some of the remaining funds from the hail damage insurance from years ago accomplished that work. Refurbishment of the men's bathroom at Witter Field was complete. Painting of various locations within City Hall, building maintenance activities. An inventory of the city buildings for the capital improvement plan is largely complete, still underway. There's still some assets that still need to be identified. And then we have an extensive citywide tree trimming program that commenced last winter and continues. With our forestry, there was over 45 dead trees and stumps removed. Our spring and fall tree planting in areas where trees were removed is complete, and we've initiated a resident participation in our urban forestry program. We're fairly limited to the number of trees that we can plant per year, primarily because we're limited in the staff and equipment to water them continuously. And so we've worked with residents where we're interested in replanting some of our boulevard trees. Those that are willing to partner and maintain them and water them, city will plant the trees, provide the staking, the watering bags, and that's gotten off to a good start. So that's a new direction for us in our urban forestry.
I just got a question if we're done
Yeah.
with this section.
Yep.
Why refurbish the men's bathroom if it's potentially going to be leveled with the aquatic center?
So that is the baseball diamond area at Witterfield, not.
Oh, okay.
Not the warming house.
Okay,
Yep.
sounds good. Thank you.
I guess piggybacking off on that, Joe, and kind of putting you on the spot in terms of what the contract says. How much activity do we need to spend at Witterfield, in relation to with the minor league baseball team that plays there?
I tell you what I can do is I can sit down with Matt and put together some numbers. Offhand, I'm not prepared to give you an accurate response, but I can certainly do that. We don't spend a lot of time there, but there is a city, certainly a city involvement in cleaning of those and supplying of those facilities. So that I can get you that information. And those contracts are up soon, and so we'll be discussing some of the problem areas and the renegotiation of those, as well as some of the costs associated with the city's contribution for power and things like that. So we can certainly get you that information, and those are things that I anticipate will be covered a little more specifically at Parks Commission meeting, but I'll certainly get that information to you because it has financial implications and things that we should be looking at.
And are those contracts that come before the council for approval?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. In engineering, I guess one of the most notable accomplishments is that there's been a serious initiative for designing our projects 2 years in advance, and the city committed funds to have a consultant help us get there, and we're still there. Project status, we've got 5 reconstruction and sidewalk projects in 2019. All but one of that is beyond 90% design completion, and most of the designs are complete with one permit to obtain. We've got 4 reconstruction projects in 2020. 2 of those are at least 30%, one's at 50 and one's at 75% design. Our goal is to have all 20 projects at 75% completion at this point in time. But we're getting closer to where we want to be with project designs, and an upcoming retirement and replacement of 2 seasonal technicians, coupled with construction operation changes in 2019, are going to cause some temporary delays in meeting the goal. But we do believe that when we get where we need to be, we're going to see some overall efficiencies improved in the engineering department, and we'll be able, long range, to meet those goals. East River Bank Phase 1 construction is substantially complete and approximately $200,000 under bid. East River Bank 2 is on track for an early bid opening in February. The East Grand Avenue design is complete and the contractor is selected. That project was led by the DOT. 2-year project to update the city's storm sewer water management plan was completed in December. And I've got some statistics here for our reconstruction. Projects, our staff this year installed over 1,500 feet of sanitary sewer, over 1,600 feet of storm sewer, 38 catch basins, nearly 2,700 feet of water main, 0.6 miles of roadway reconstruction, about 2 miles of sidewalk rework, about 3,000 feet of sewer lining. Some survey statistics. This is important. Our survey team is kind of an unsung group. We don't talk about those activities very much, but this work is critical in order for the city to be able to plan. The establishment of city benchmarks to the Wisconsin DOT datum is complete, and that was is it complete? Not quite.
The conversion over to that system is
complete.
there. We still
Okay.
have some benchmark loops that we want to run to establish more of the city, but a lot of the conversions take place.
We've set 226 benchmarks, and this is, I think, of interest, of 16.23 miles of bench loops and a 7/1000th of a foot average closure, 3/32 of an inch. That is phenomenal. It just goes to demonstrate the skill and patience and ability of our staff to have an average closure that tight.
I guess for the new guy here, what's a benchmark set and a benchmark loop?
So benchmark loops are establishing known elevations throughout the city.
Okay.
And when you do that, you start from a known point and you end at that known point. And when you're picking up and moving your equipment, there's always the potential to introduce some small amount of error. And I mean,
That's phenomenal.
This is phenomenal. I've run bench loops, and I couldn't dream of getting that close.
Yes, to give you a kind of perspective, Mr. Blazer, in the ironworking trade, if we're within a 1/4 inch on a beam welded, this is 3/32, and this
In
is
16 miles.
Yeah. So this is crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Surveyors are doing well.
they're doing well. That group also performed construction, staking, and on-site assistance, assisting our construction staff. Performed the preliminary surveys and worked on as-built plans. They obtained over almost 10,000 survey points this last year to accomplish that. That group performed line and grade for driveway permits, people redoing driveways or building driveways, 22 of those. Marked right-of-ways for brushing purposes for our street department staff, and did a lot of work for scanning the permanent limited easements to make sure that those are on file in the clerk's office. Our engineering staff, 12 DNR permits for projects. Those are Chapter 30 permits, dewatering, notice of intent, sewer extensions, water extensions. We had 2 Army Corps permits that were put together and submitted for city projects, 131 excavating permits that were reviewed and approved for excavation within the city, different contractors, 75 concrete permits for driveways, sidewalks. We had 19 asphalt permits, 5 different right-of-way occupancy permits, 2 testing well permits, 3 stormwater permits, 5 stormwater connection permits, and 25 permit parking permits. Those are all activities that take place through the engineering department. And one of the things, I guess, that really it takes a lot of time, and there's not a whole lot of thanks for it, is the Diggers Hotline ticket review. There's almost 2,000 tickets where someone was going to do some excavation, and our staff had to go out and identify where our storm sewer, where our sanitary sewer, and where sanitary laterals are. That's quite a few per day. I mean, sometimes we get 40 or 50 of them in a day, and we have generally one person during the summer. It's been an intern or a LTE that does that, and then when that person is no longer working with us, one of our full-time staff has to go out and do that work. So they're running around an awful lot to do that. Some concrete statistics: just about 10,000 feet of curb and gutter was replaced. We had about almost 1,700 lineal feet of joints were ground out as part of our sidewalk maintenance program. You may recollect we started doing that just a couple years ago to augment our sidewalk replacement program. It's a much cheaper solution. It's cheaper for the property owner. And if it's a situation where we have a boulevard tree or a yard tree that is slowly over time raising a piece of sidewalk instead of replacing it, and 10 years later having to have it replaced again. We can have it ground at a fifth of the cost, and maybe it needs to be ground again in 10 years instead of replaced again. So it's a very cost-effective program. And 63,000 feet of concrete pavement joints were sealed. In the street department, we've got several work groups in the street department. We have our sign shop that does our painting and signs. We have our maintenance. We have our maintenance, meaning street maintenance activities. We have our mechanics and those maintenance activities, and we have our ditch crew. We had 145,000 square yards of chip seal maintenance performed on about 7.8 miles of roadway. In doing so, we used about 55,000 gallons of oil and about 1,700 tons of fractured chips. We completed about 180 hot patches and paver patches, totaling nearly 13,000 tons of asphalt on patchwork. We did 39 full-depth concrete repairs. That's sawing out, removing, and replacing concrete in some of our concrete streets, which amounted to about 400 feet of roadway and 150 cubic yards of concrete. We did approximately 56 catch basin repairs, including 5 rebuilds, complete rebuilds, and 51 maintenance repairs. That might be casting, rings, backs, tuck pointing around the pipe, joints. And then, of course, when they're done with that, they've got to re-pour the curb and restore the site with topsoil and seed. We replaced or adjusted about 30 sanitary manhole or storm sewer castings. We collected almost 1,200 tons of recycling through our automated process, and that is up slightly from about 1,100 tons last year. I don't have the number handy, but it's significantly higher than when we started before we did the automated. And it hasn't, our process of recycling has required consistent and dedicated enforcement, and that has reduced it has reduced some of the perpetual problems and enhanced the cleanliness of the communities. It's that enforcement has been a cooperative effort, and we've worked with Harvard University Research Group to come up with some behavioral solutions to try to encourage that. So that is a project that is currently underway. We've been doing it now for a couple months, and we should have their data to them finalized so that they can come up with their conclusions on what we've done. We've collected 5,600 tons of garbage, about 2,000 tons of street sweepings. We've collected about 9,500 tons of yard waste, and we've processed that. We managed 25 snow events in 2018 and used about 1,600 tons of salt in doing so. We crushed 12,000 yards of asphalt using city staff this year instead of contracted services, renting the equipment. Provided street closures for multiple events within the city. Our parade, our 4th of July, we kindled the Spirit Parade, run with the cops, the trunk or treat, the Royal Event, run the Rapids, Grand Affair, so on and so forth. We raised 4 condemned buildings for the Planning and Economic Development Department. Removed carpet and interior walls and ceiling and prepping the East Town Plaza building downtown for reuse or eventual sale. Replaced 125 stop signs that no longer meet the requirements of the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Replaced the banners in the downtown districts 12 times, trying to keep that fresh. We do have some fall banners that are still up on First Street North, though, because our bucket truck was broke down and we forgot, kind of left those up, so those will be coming down next week. We reconfigured the driving lanes and turn lanes on 16th Street over by the high school from the expressway down to Huntington Avenue. That's been very successful, and the high school has responded that is much improved traffic flow. We worked on redevelopment of city ordinances in preparation to convert over our automated refuse collection. And we have taken delivery on 6,800 of the automated collection cans. And the installation of the donated exercise equipment in Demuth Park is complete. We still do have the fall protection surface and some final landscaping to do in the spring, but we had some time yet. When the weather got cold and we could still get in the ground, so that donated equipment has been installed.
Joe,
Yes.
where are we at with that building on East Town Plaza? Is there any update with that?
You know, I have to get back to you on that too. I have to talk with Adam Tagan. You know, I don't know what those discussions have been.
Oh, I guess as far as construction is, so.
So the building's been gutted. All of the office walls, the non-structural walls have been removed, and the carpeting's been pulled up. So the building's essentially gutted and open for whatever type of use a potential developer might be interested in.
So street department is out of there then?
Street department's essentially out of there now, yes. Wastewater plant, 1.1 billion gallons of wastewater treated, recycled maybe you'd say. 4.1 million pounds of BOD is treated, 1.2 million pounds of total suspended solids treated. 35,000 pounds of phosphorus treated. 45 million cubic feet of biogas was produced from our TPAD digestion system. That biogas was all used to fuel our generator and produce power in-house.
Do you are you able to create what that would be if we had to pay for it?
Yeah, so here we have 6.9 million kilowatts was generated and used by our generator, saving the utility about 65% on our electrical bills. And I want to give some credit to our wastewater superintendent and his staff in their pursuit of maximizing the use of that piece of equipment. It's been a real challenge to do that, to bring in the right amount of hauled in waste, high strength waste, so that we're not just spending more money pumping materials around the plant, but using those extra nutrients to make the plant operate better and to produce more energy. I mean, the efforts that Ryan and his staff have made for this accomplishment is it's outstanding. It really is noteworthy.
So, Joe, it says we saved over 65% on electric bills. Do you know what that would be in dollars?
I would have to get that
Or
number.
like
Yeah, I'd have to talk to Ryan and get that
that's-
number.
That's,
It's a lot.
that's great.
It's
I just-
significant.
we should definitely tout that and be proud of that.
We produced 5.5 million pounds of Class A biosolids that has been land applied as commercial grade fertilizer. 9.6 million gallons of hauled in waste has been treated. So we're supporting the neighboring communities, some neighboring industries.
The pump haulers and stuff.
Yep.
Okay.
And that has resulted in over $150,000 in tipping fees for that hauled in waste. And that serves as dual purpose. It's extra revenue for the utility to help keep the rates flat if possible for our residents. And it also, like I mentioned, has helped the nutrient balancing issues that we've had at the plant. We really have some top-notch staff there.
Come a long ways.
It has.
Sitting there every month at meetings that,
Yeah.
hearing what they have to say.
Yeah, the process of treating wastewater at the plant has been challenging. The type of waste that plant receives, because so much of it's industrial waste and a certain type of industrial waste, has resulted in real difficulty with settling. And there's a design capacity of the plant, but there's also an effective capacity of the plant. And that effective capacity of the plant is largely affected by how well the wastewater settles. I mean, you know this in your profession. The staff has tried. I mean, has worked with professionals, engineering firms, with different experts across the country, various other wastewater operators, trying to figure out. We have poor settleability. Our effective capacity of the plant is much less than what it should be. And if some of our larger industries that are depending on that increased production, we would struggle to meet those needs, right? And they're expecting it. And our staff has worked tirelessly to resolve those issues, and has for the last 10 years. And in the last 2 years has been successful now. You know, that plant is running great. It's a lot of work to do it. Our settlability is where it needs to be, which means the plant capacity is where it was designed to be rather than how it was operating. I mean, I can't say enough about the operators at the plant. Then at wastewater, we also have a collection system that needs to be maintained. That group cleaned over 1,000 catch basins, and in the process, we're trying to make that process more efficient. Instead of cleaning a catch basin just once every 5 years, we are documenting the condition of the catch basin, whether it needed it or not, the extent that it needed cleaning, so that in the future we'll be creating computerized work orders that this year these catch basins need cleaning, rather than just saying we're going to clean a fifth of the community. We televised over 12 miles of sanitary and storm sewers. That has assisted the engineering department for design work and has helped plan in our capital improvement process by assessing conditions and monitoring those systems. It's because of those televising reports that we are juggling around some of our capital improvement projects that we're suggesting, because we're determining, hey, that there is some real need in these areas versus those areas for some of the underground infrastructure. We're using that data to determine how we're going to maintain our streets then, so that we're not improving a street or doing another chip seal on a street that we know needs sanitary sewer or storm sewer replaced in a few years. Nearly complete with a $6.5 million West Side Lift Station and Force Main project. It's brand new, state-of-the-art pumping station to serve the entire west side of the community, including the industrial park. We've upgraded 7 lift stations to radio telemetry versus phone telemetry to improve communications with remote sites and allow for more data to be received, so that the operators and the maintenance staff that services those lift stations has a better understanding of what problems may exist before they leave and go check in. So it makes operations more efficient. We've upgraded 6 lift stations with pressure transducer systems and controllers for improved reliability and functionality. I mentioned the efforts at the plant. They've used the nitrification initiative to improve the solid settling. The current monthly average is less than 300. This month it's down to about 100, which is greatly improved over what it was. There was virtually no settlement in the past, and if we didn't have some of the equipment that we had, as far as the size of our clarifiers, we'd be violating our permit. Now we're operating really well. We switched from ferric chloride for phosphorus removal to a polyaluminum chloride. It's slightly more expensive, but that has also aided in settling and overall water clarity, which makes our UV disinfection more effective.
Does that help out for human contact? Because ferric chloride is very, very caustic, whereas this aluminum much better to handle?
It is. It's better to handle. It's safer for the staff in general. Absolutely. The improved settlability has also improved the rotating drum thickener performance. We've seen a 30% reduction in overall polymer use in the last 3 months on those, and polymer has been a very expensive part of the utilities budget. The improved settlability has allowed staff to take an entire final clarifier offline, saving about $3,000 in operating costs. And it's intangible at this point, but also wear and tear on that drive unit. And I mentioned it before, but additional usable BOD treatment capacity. So we can take in more hauled waste, or we can save that capacity for local growth of industries, or we can haul in extra waste until we need that extra capacity. A couple other highlights in general. As you know, we've completed the concepts, designs, and construction plans and specifications for the aquatic and park complex at Witter Field. I've attended various community meetings to discuss recycling operations, our city street projects, aquatics design. It developed and approved the 2019 and 2023 capital improvement plan, which guides all of our work in public works into the future. Worked diligently on organizational planning within the public works department to improve efficiencies and anticipate our future needs, and worked with the Public Works Department heads to improve communication, working relationships, trust, and confidence within each of our work groups within Public Works, engineering, street department, parks activities, and wastewater. So we've accomplished a lot this year, and I know this took a bit of time to go through, but I'm really proud of the staff and their efforts, and we are really, really blessed with some excellent staff that has a vast amount of knowledge. Our street department staff, with the crew that we have, we can just about do anything. With the zoo project, we're siding buildings, we're installing doors, we're putting in tile floors, we're redoing walls and buildings. Those aren't typically activities. Pouring decorative concrete. Those aren't typically activities you'd expect out of a street department, but our staff's talented and we can do it, and so we're getting a lot of work done. So.
One more quick question.
Yes.
As far as you mentioned 12 miles of televisation, by televising, can we see an I&I problem, or do you have to do a different study with it?
No. Televising helps all of that. When we're televising that, one of the frustrations that particular crew had is that the city has televised sanitary sewers for decades. The record keeping for that, though, has been a real challenge. You've got videotapes, you've got CDs, you've got written reports, and if you're looking for something, finding it can be tough. Mm-hmm. And so typically what happens is if the engineering department or another department's looking for something, they'll go and, hey, if you were the person or the team that was doing the work, what do you remember about this or that? And that's frustrating to them because, they spent all that time compiling the data, compiling the reports, and nobody's looking at it. They're just asking them, what do you remember? We've upgraded that process where it's a digital process now. It's linked with our GIS system. We're able to look at a map, click on it if we have data, and take a look at it. So from a planning and capital improvement planning viewpoint, we've got better information a lot faster, and they know how important it is. And it's also allowed them to get more work done. They're not jumping around all of a sudden re-televising something maybe they televised 2 years ago, because we can more easily grab that data.
Good.
Alrighty, thanks, Joel. Number 3, review and consider approval of the change order request from Strand Associates as it relates to the West Side Pumping Station project.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I apologize. Just a quick question, Joe. In 2018, we repaired, a little over reconstructed half a mile of road. Now, I've heard you in the past speak about how we need to get up to 3 miles of road in order to be efficient. What is our game plan moving forward for 2019 to increase the amount of roads that we're actually doing complete construction on?
So complete construction, I'm not so worried about. I think the rate that we are replacing our sanitary sewer and water mains is sustainable, but the rate that we're updating our streets isn't. And that's partly because a street isn't going to last 100 years, but the underground infrastructure is. Mm-hmm. And so what we're lacking right now is a street resurfacing program. Mm-hmm. And we're still looking at, and we'll be evaluating, how much more efficient are we going to be at refuse collection? Are we going to, with what we've got proposed, we're going to have some reduced tipping fees, because we're not just collecting everything anymore. And our goal is to try to evaluate those and try to put those savings into and create eventually a robust resurfacing program that will be in addition to our ditch crew and our underground work. So it'll be additional work that we're going to try to accomplish. If we're just going to be replacing a surface or a mill and overlay, doesn't require as much staff time. You've got your material costs, but we can accomplish quite a bit. You know, my goal was to try to get around $75,000 to $100,000, gets us a couple blocks a year, and moves us in that direction. So, you know, we're going to be evaluating what types of efficiencies that we are going to generate this year with some of our changes in operations. And, you know, we're going to have to come back and list our priorities and take a look at what we're doing as far as a department overall, you know, from our parks maintenance activities to our public works maintenance activities, and try to determine, okay, what do we need to do now to get that resurfacing program where it needs to be so that we're sustainable.
Well, and then to be sustainability with the finances aspect, I think as a committee, we need to be very aware on what the cost savings have been for the Public Works Department and as a council as a whole, so that when there are cost savings, they don't drift to a different department or somewhere else, that we create a baseline. And what we had for, I'm going to further interject this down the line, but what we have for our 2019 budget, if there are cost savings from 18, I want those to go back right into Public Works to either some type of a revolving loan fund for ourselves for that purpose or whatever else. And then on top of it, personnel. You know, like you said, Joe, we've got a number of individuals who are very good at different things. And I'm also concerned about the positions as well. I want to at least maintain, if not adding one to whatever potential Public Works employees in the future. Because if we can do more things in-house, it's going to save the taxpayer that much more, and it's going to benefit the taxpayer that much more. So identifying those cost savings measures, but ensuring that money stays within the Public Works Department. That's what I think we as again, a committee as well as a council as a whole need to be cognizant with. So,
right. So, for example, in engineering, we're trying to take a look at when we are when we find ourselves farming out activities. What are the costs of those activities, and what's it look long range? Would it be more cost effective if we had another engineer versus a technician, or another technician versus an LTE, you know, a full-time technician versus a part-time technician? You know, we're evaluating that in engineering as we speak, right? I mean, we've got some. You heard about it a little bit in HR, but you know, we've got a number of employees that started essentially at the same time in engineering, and so before they're ready to retire, we're working not just with myself and the city engineer, but also our street department staff to see some of these activities that we're doing where we struggle with some communication or there's some inefficiencies. How can we restructure in order to make that more efficient? And that may result in not necessarily more cost, but just reorganization of how we're managing our staff. You know, the same thing with our street department. You know, engineering is providing some services for our construction-related activities that once upon a time were done by the construction-related activity group. And we feel that there's some efficiencies that we've lost in that. And you know, some time ago there was a reduction in staff, and it was worth trying. And you know, we're evaluating what worked and what didn't. And in some cases, we may be able to reprioritize, or you know, things, for example, like our contracts for janitorial services. We may be able to establish a janitorial type position for less than what we're paying for those contract services. We're in the process of evaluating all that and trying to be able to come back with efficiency so that we have more funds available for projects like our resurfacing program.
Thank you.
I guess I apologize.
That's
So
okay.
what is the projected for 2019 mileage resurfacing?
I'd have to pull out the CIP and just look at the projects that we have. Resurfacing, I don't have anything special right now. We'll determine that as we do our street check. We have chip seal. The resurfacing will be part of that maintenance budget. Paul and I make those decisions generally once we start getting closer to spring. But we have what we have in the budget. We have some additional funds. I know Paul's got a list of streets that we'd like to potentially do some resurfacing on versus leave them and go or do another chip seal. You know, we're trying to avoid having a street get to that 75-year age where we've done a great job maintaining it, but now it needs to be resurfaced and we still have 25 to 30 years left on the underground. That just puts us in a terribly wasteful spot. When that street gets to be 50 years old, maybe 60, that's the time that, you know, on a residential street, if we can get that resurfacing program in play, then we're planning the obsolescence for the street and the underground infrastructure at the same time. That's the goal.
Because I'll be watching this because the main reason is we can't get to that 3 mile if we don't increase it every year.
Right.
It shows a need.
It does.
So by increasing it, no matter how big the amount is, last year you did 5/8 of a mile, we're gonna have to do 3/4 to a mile this year. And it also shows where the needs are to keep increasing that. But I can't help you, or we as a council can't help you.
Right.
If we're not planning to do more than what we did last year, because that's when we notice our inefficiencies, and that's what I'm getting at, and I wanna make sure that it's.
And in this
transferred
process,
correctly.
we'll be visiting what our priorities are, right? I mean, there are limits to what we can do. And so we have to juggle priorities and decide we may or may not be able to do this type of maintenance activity or have this or that or whatever. You know.
I think we understand that. Like I said, I just wanted to make sure it was clear to you that we need to increase that this year.
Oh, absolutely.
And we need to increase that to see our inefficiencies so we can help.
You bet.
Otherwise, you know, we can juggle things,
Talk about it for
talk
years.
about it all the time, but nothing ever gets done as far as improving. And that's where,
Thank you.
thank you.
Welcome to the pumping station.
So there was in your packet, there was some information, and unfortunately at the time, I did not have any details that I was able to give out, so I did pass out, and I don't know if everyone got a copy. I did print off enough for the committee members, but I don't know that I printed off enough for everybody, but.
This side of the table.
Okay, so what we have is back in July or August, we received notice from Strand. You'll recollect that we did a change order for the rock conditions at the West Side Lift Station construction project. At that time, there was additional work that Strand was doing. They had itemized a bunch of that and had asked, well, is it appropriate to discuss a change order at this point in time for that additional work? I thought, no, let's not do it at this time. Let's receive a letter from you, which was presented to the committee at that time. But let's see if we can review our efficiencies a bit on the rest of the project. If we can, if there's some overestimating on some oversight services, soil services, things like that, let's evaluate it at a later date and see if we can enjoy some of those benefits. So I got some numbers from Strand. Ryan and I reviewed it and sat down, and we had a conversation with some of the Strand engineers earlier today. And as staff, we had the opinion that during the design phase of the project, the soil borings that were taken may have been representative for the general site, but once the building footprint was selected, those borings weren't really all that consistent, and as design engineers, we were disappointed that they didn't request additional borings over the footprint of the site. And we feel that had that been done, some of that relocation wouldn't have been necessary. There still would have been some additional costs. There still would have been some of that additional rock excavation that was required because we know before we would have let the project. And so in reviewing, I did get itemized numbers from Strand, their hours, the staff, the costs. And Ryan and I both felt that the design of the base slab to reduce the rock excavation and the redesign of the pumping station location, there would have been some costs involved during the design process but not as much as what was required because of the change order. And so we've asked them to reduce that, and they did so. It was about $7,000 worth of design work that we felt that they should be responsible for. And so the end result is through May and June, the evaluation of the change condition information from Myron, the initial review of the $400,000 proposal from Michaels, the discussion with Myron on the construction and construction approach, the redesign of the base slab, the additional construction progress meetings and follow-up meetings to accomplish that, the review then of the reduced proposal from Michaels that dropped from $410,000 to $349,000, coordination of additional soil borings, the redesign of the lift station, and the final, as we continue to negotiate, the final approval of the $200,000 change order rather than the $410,000 change order is worth the $26,000 that they are now requesting after we've removed some of their design costs. So they're asking for a change order of $26,000. As staff, we feel that that's appropriate. There's also about a $12,000 credit that's going to come in the form of from the contractor that was paid to them. That'll come back to the city because some of the rock excavation that was anticipated didn't happen, and the change order was specific to the tonnage, but it was a lump sum change order. So we'll be getting some funds back to help cover that. So you're looking at about $24,000 or $14,000 of actual costs. So with that, I would recommend that the committee approve that amount of $26,000 to Strand for additional fees resulting from the change condition claim. And that all does still fit within the budget of the Clean Water Fund loan.
I guess I was of the opinion, and I apologize, Mr. Chair. I guess I was of the opinion that we dealt with this back in August.
We were notified of it in August, and we thought we wanted to wait and see what type of cost savings would exist. So we dealt with the change order from the contractor at that point in time, and we were notified that there were additional costs by Strand, but our work with them is a lump sum, but they charge us on a time and materials basis, right? So at that time, the decision was let's hold off on any type of change order until we're much later in the project to see where those numbers really need to come.
So I apologize, just for clarification. So Strand back in August was actually asking for a change order for Myron and for Michaels, not for themselves.
Correct. They notified us that there were additional costs for themselves, but the change order in August was for Myron and Michaels. That's correct. Did not involve any engineering, design, and oversight consulting services.
Can I ask a question in between, Mr. Grant?
Yeah, I was just questioning.
Oh, so you done. As far as what is our agreement with Strand? Is it something where, like for observation and construction, I guess, like testing, are we paying for 2 guys 40 hours a week type of a thing, or how is that?
No. So they're on site when they need to be on site, when there's work being done that requires oversight, measurements, things like that. There's soil testing that's here when it's appropriate to be here. There's not always somebody on site. It's just as needed. And we wanted to run the project that way, trying to keep these types of oversight costs as reasonable as we can. We know we need staff here. We don't have enough internal staff, nor do we necessarily have the construction experience on a project like this to really be able to provide that kind of oversight. So we do need their services, but it is not they're here from 7 to 4 every day type of activity.
Sure.
Have we hit that maximum from the principal forgiveness from the Clean Water Fund loan program? Because I think I asked that question last time, and it was something on the order of we're capped. It isn't a percentage. It's just.
Yeah, I think it's 700 and some thousand we got in principal forgiveness, and we are not, we're not to the.
We haven't maxed it out yet.
No.
So this could receive whatever is
Yes.
10% or 7%.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I'll move that we, pay the $26,000 fee here.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have
Aye.
it. Nay. 1 nay.
Let the record show that
Let the record show.
Mr. Graff voted.
4, preliminary resolution declaring intent to levy special assessments for the following public work and improvement projects as described in the capital improvement plan. A, Smith Street, Railroad Street to Riverview Drive, 2021 that is. 4, B, Cherry Street, Riverview Drive to First Street North, that's also 2021.
So both of these projects are identified in the capital improvements plan for calendar year 2021. The preliminary resolutions are drafted and included in the packet for both projects. Again, the preliminary resolution puts property owners on notice of pending special assessments, or the city's intent to levy special assessments. The primary need for those two projects, I believe, are related to water and sanitary replacement along with the Fourth Street condition. Staff is looking for approval of those resolutions.
Where is Smith Street?
So, yeah, both of the streets are, they cross each other. They're on just west of First Street North.
Yeah, I thought Cherry,
Up by
yeah.
RCH, and northwest of there,
North of Spring.
north of Spring Street, yeah.
And that's full everything surface improvements.
Yep, full reconstruct.
Yeah, just across the tracks.
So Riverview Drive is kind of fine then?
Riverview Drive, I would say it's in a similar nature. But at Cherry Street and part of Smith Street, they've been plagued with water main breaks and issues up there, so.
So it'd only be 2 blocks of Cherry Street then?
2 blocks of Cherry, and then Smith Street's quite a bit longer stretch.
The whole street?
Yeah, from Railroad all the way to Riverview.
Was this a waterworks project that they deemed
Yeah, a combination project.
combination
Yes.
project? So it's a perfect project.
It is, yeah.
What I like to refer to, so I make a motion to approve.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? Committee will vote. All in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, ayes have it. That's both of them.
Those are exactly what we want.
Number 5, preliminary resolutions for public work and improvements along 14th Place South from 385 feet south of Rosewood Avenue to a point approximately 560 feet south of Rosewood Avenue.
So I did include a map for this item in the packet for reference. This request was initiated by SK Construction. They're the developer, along with Dave Ramsden. They're two different developers, but SK Construction has property on the east side of 14th Place, and Ramsden has property on the west side. SK Construction is completing, they've got 3 lots left in their development. On the east side, 14th Place on the map, their lot numbers 91, 92, and 93. So he's requesting primarily, he was hoping for utility extensions yet this fall, but there was some misunderstanding on prior requests and approvals by the committee that we clarified with them. So we're bringing the item back. He's primarily interested in getting 80 feet of sewer and water extended, followed up by street and curb and gutter extension, either late 2019 or sometime in early 2020. The clarification comes into play with the SK Construction initially requested to pay 100% of the costs. He's fine paying 100% of his costs, just not 100% of Dave Ramsden's costs across the street. So that's why we're bringing it back. This would, in order to get the pavement in and follow our typical special assessment procedures, result in about $22,000 of city subsidy for street paving and curb and gutter installation. That's, since Steve's been doing his developments, that's the procedure, that's our policy that the city's continued with. I mean, I guess it's up for consideration, I guess, at any point, but the sewer, water main, they're 100% cost of the property owner, following our normal policy. I guess just to be consistent with the way we have done the agreements and sewer extensions on the developer's behalf, would recommend the preliminary resolution to go through that same special assessment process.
Shane?
You lost me there for a second. So are they looking for us to subsidize costs?
Well, our normal special assessment procedures, the way we do special assess for, say, High Street or any of our other reconstruct projects, the sewer replacement, that's 100%. The replacement cost of utilities is 100% utility cost. The initial installation, the first time they're installed for new developments, that would be 100% cost of the property owner or developer. The street assessment, so the curb and gutter, is charged at 2/3 cost to the property owner. That's under a new or reconstruct project. And then the permanent street surfacing is 20% property owner. So each property owner on each side of the street pays 20% of the street cost, and the city pays 60%, and that's under a reconstruct and a new construct type project. So the city, I guess, is normally subsidized under our normal special assessment policy. We subsidize under those same rules. New developments are always up for
Every project on a new development can be negotiated by the city and the developer. This particular development has been done this way thus far in its entirety, where they're paying for the sewer, they're paying for the water, and there's a cost share on the street surface, the same as a reconstruct.
What are we looking, I guess, what we got here in the blue and red is already existing, and then we're gonna have blue and red on 91, blue and red on 92, blue and red on 93.
Right.
Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, so the blue and red would get extended 80 feet south to the south lot line of lot 93.
So all this is existing here.
Yep.
What they want to do
Just
is
this.
add main here.
Right.
Correct.
And then we're gonna put the laterals to 91, 92, and 93. Do we need to tear out any existing asphalt at all, or no?
Nope.
Are we dead ending water right here?
That's the current location of,
And we're not
There's a
extending,
hydrant there, right?
so water isn't getting extended, just sewer then?
well, it'd get extended to the south lot line, but it'd still be a dead end type situation.
But
It'd be extended, the dead end would be extended to here.
So this one should have an extension on there, just, I mean,
Right.
just kind of, but, so, how come we don't require a loop in there of some kind? You know, I mean, because is this a situation, hypothetically, you know, we always want to try and plan ahead and everything like this. Hypothetically, is this going to be like a situation on 21st Place where, you know, we've got stagnant water? That's one of the challenges, because as far as developments go, I'm not anti-business at all. I mean, if they want to build, that's great, whatever, the benefits are tax-based, but when it's piecemeal like this, the residents come in, you know, and 2 years later they say, well, what's wrong with my water? It stinks. Well, it's because we never enforced the developer to loop the water. You know, I mean, sewer, I can understand dead ending because it's gravity, but water, you need that, and I don't know, maybe there isn't a deal right now. Maybe it's short enough with the existing residents there where it isn't a problem, but I mean, I'd rather see it looped somewhere.
Yeah, I can certainly check with the water utility and see what their thoughts are on that. Certainly the piecemealing has become a bit of a challenge as, you know, multiple developers and one developer kind of nearing the completion of his work and the other developer not interested at this time in pursuing anything. There's future right-of-way, or there's existing right-of-way for future development, go further south and tie in. But yeah,
Eventually
that's-
loop that, right?
I think I got it up here.
The right of way only goes to Coon, where the extension of Coon would be.
Yeah, correct. And then it connect back into 12.
But there isn't any right of way there though. Right of way actually ends right at, there'd have to be a dedication somewhere to bring it around. And where would you loop it? Would you go east? I don't really see any infrastructure on the east. It looked like you'd almost have to, or go west. It almost looks like you'd have to go east all the way to 16th. Or if that cul-de-sac to the east on 15th Place were to come around, but there's no dedication there either. It isn't in my district, so I guess I wouldn't get the phone call stagnant water, but I know that there's been an issue on 21st Place. And
Yeah, and I know the water utility, at least in regards to 21st Place, had installed, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a flushing device, automatic flushing device that was approved by the DNR, kind of case-by-case basis to allow some fresh water to come in and cycle that out a bit, but.
all right, yeah, that's all I have for that, I think.
So is Ramsden gonna be assessed for their portion?
Yes.
Is that, that's what I was just confused about.
So under the previous request in August, it was, you know, because of the requests and assumptions, anticipated that Steve was interested in just, look, I only need 80 feet of utilities, let's just get this 80 feet in, I'll pay for it. I want to get moving on my last couple buildings and be done. In lieu of his statements to that, this would be the next avenue that the city would have to collect assessments from the other property owner.
And I want to say at that time, there was a suggestion by the other property owner that they didn't want to pay for it, and was there something that was floated on that the taxpayers would subsidize that until development occurred, and then when development occurred on a particular parcel, or if it got parceled out, then that's when that property owner would pay. But what you're saying is that there isn't any floating. The other beneficiary, the other property owner, is going to be assessed.
Yeah, just like any other project.
I was going to say, because I've got some land that I haven't even identified if I'm going to develop or not, but I'd like to have some water and sewer put in there, and then I could spec build one a year and just pay the assessment at that time.
Right.
You know. that'd be nice.
That-
Hey, Tom, you wanna go?
Right,
into
yeah,
that?
we get in on that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as, if I understand correctly, that the request is for the extension of mains and then laterals, and then we would put it in, and then we assess the cost of it back to the property owner is the actual cost of whatever the percentages are that are written on it, whatever the ordinance says. I don't have a problem with that.
That's correct.
So I'll make a
Make a
motion.
motion.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion to that effect. Any further discussion, questions?
Well, I think you brought up a good point on the 21st place, and did we not look in with Public or Waterworks to see what their opinion was on that? We did or did not?
They're aware of it. Yep. They're aware of the request. They didn't have any concerns that they commented on regarding it, but we can certainly double check with them and make sure.
Well, that's actually a good question. Not that there isn't communication or whatever, but is there, if there was a concern, their Waterworks and Lighting Commission, are they aware of these particular plans? I mean, it's not like they somehow didn't know, not necessarily that we're voting on it or whatever, but that these improvements are being asked because they gotta identify, stuff too. So, I mean, I would assume, and I shouldn't assume because everybody knows what that means, it's one of those where if there was a problem, would Waterworks and Lighting Commission come to the city and say, hey, don't approve this without our input in there? Or is there a potential situation, and so therefore I would assume that if there is something in the future, they're gonna deal with it, or is there somehow that communication isn't given, or is there a lack of communication or something on this particular one? Or is it a case where we're just adding 79 feet, it isn't looped, chances are because there is no
Be
dedication.
a temporary hydrant put on the end and, right. No, we work with them on all these projects, and if they'll, if they have, they run through their numbers, our engineers will design it a certain way, they'll look at it, see, are we meeting fire flow protection requirements based on our fire flow model? We size properly for, for the future, do we need it to loop? What do we need temporarily for valves, permanently for valves and hydrants, things like that. They certainly, those communications happen, and we meet with them, and they're vocal about it.
Good.
And I guess one distinction between 21st place and 14th place, primarily the development will be complete down to the dead end. Whereas
That's also-
21st place is still primarily undeveloped. I mean, it's scattered. And so the additional development on 14th place and the active usage, it'll be a little bit different situation.
That's what I mean, it's an odd piece of property because 14th place goes further south and then it dead ends, and that's the other side, all the woods around it is Grand Rapids. So it really creates a unique situation that we didn't annex that in.
That's about
In the future.
1,300 feet long versus this 500, 600 foot stretch. So-
Yeah, and I would anticipate, given the location of the power poles, that the utility either has an easement or has some, has an easement on the south corner or the south line of that 40.
Right, through that,
Yes.
the extension of Coon.
Yep. Basically from,
What an odd piece of
right from the south corporate limits over to 16th Street.
Yeah, because I think this city still own that.
40.
Yeah.
Yes, the city does
Okay.
still own that. 40.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, dead ends like that, water main freeze ups and everything else, but I mean, Waterworks and Lighting Commission.
Yeah, water main freeze-ups really aren't an issue with newly constructed stuff. It's put in deep enough where,
That, and with the volume of people living there, like you mentioned, Joe, it's the 21st place is scattered, whereas this should have enough showers and sinks turning on and toilets flushing that there's enough water going through.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anything else?
We do have a motion and a
We
second.
have a motion and a second.
Okay. We do,
Yep.
yep. Kubiak, Rayon.
Yep. Committee, all in favor, respond by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Item 6, review or request to modify chapter 340 of the municipal code to allow for two-way traffic along the following streets during the reconstruction of East Grand Avenue between the Grand Avenue Bridge and 8th Street South, 4th Street South from Birch Street to East Grand Avenue, 6th Street South from Peach Street to East Grand Avenue, and 7th Street South from Peach Street to East Grand Avenue.
So we're just in preparations for the 2019 construction project, taking a look at the traffic control and parking impacts for all the businesses, all the people that use the east side downtown area, and how they're going to navigate that corridor when it's shut down. So the parking, everything that we identified that could be where parking could be allowed is already approvable in the ordinance. It's not restricted currently, so so that's taken care of. This item's specific to the one-way to two-way conversion. Certainly the one-way streets definitely would limit traffic and access to businesses, at least legally. So the request is to make those modifications. The draft changes were identified in ordinance, provided in the packet, and that just the recommendation that the temporary modifications be approved just during construction at this point. We're also reviewing long-term changes related to East Junior High and the rest of the corridor and the need for these one-way streets. So that's something that we might bring back before the East Grand construction project is complete. But for the time being, primary focus on construction is what we're working about.
I guess just for more kind of clarification or whatever, as far as, and I understand why we have to have modify the code, because it's written in the code the way that it is. Can we do something different moving forward? Like by having something else in the code that says for construction purposes, we have the ability without changing the code to do this? Because I assume, even though you suggest that we're going to monitor, certain areas, I assume that we're going to reverse all these when everything goes back, or most of them, or whatever. That's the intent.
Yeah, it's likely.
The only reason why I say that is, or why I'm bringing this up, is because if we're changing them now, and technically we don't put up the traffic controls now, and someone could be in violation by going one way or the other way, or now, not going one way or parking there, because I would assume that we're not going to put up the parking or the traffic barricades until construction actually occurs. We're going to let everything status quo. Like, for example, down by the post office, we're not going to make that two-way until East Grand is.
Right, and that's the key, is that the action by the council would be during construction, right? So that the language can be written, but that it doesn't go into effect until that East Grand Avenue is closed.
Is that something that we have to make in the motion? I mean, just in case.
Absolutely.
It's one
In
of
the motion should state during construction.
Okay, and almost like a temporary modification, or this is a full modification of the code, and then we're gonna potentially reverse it.
In the motion, you could have that the language reverts back to the way it exists now, as soon as the project is substantially complete, probably be or either substantially or final completion, upon final completion.
Yeah, in its entirety. The only reason that we would not make this as a two-way is obviously the width, right?
The width is there for two-way. It's just parking needs.
Okay, fair enough.
I guess the other caveat is the long-term plans for the school. I mean, the one-way one-way streets are, I think, largely in place because of school traffic. You know, if they still have some intentions that might require one-way streets, that would be the only other consideration, but.
So I guess I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to temporarily modify chapter 340 of municipal code to modify the traffic flow patterns upon commencement of construction activities through the duration of final completion of the street projects.
I'll make a second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, committee will vote. All in favor respond by aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, the ayes have it. Item 7, review referral list. 7 and 8. I think the preliminary resolution 14 please.
Yep, 7 and 8 is done. 9, I have a request, and I'll bring that request to the next meeting. They're looking for some,
First Congregational Church. Is that the Episcopalian church there?
what was it, right
Right
across?
behind the post south of the theater.
Yeah,
Oh, behind the theater, okay.
yeah.
Kind of, getting mixed up myself.
I'm gonna get struck by lightning if I go up.
Okay,
Well, one thing that we haven't, this was one thing that Mr. Kellogg brought forth was the angle parking on Second at that apartment complex, and I haven't heard anything further with that. Interestingly enough, I noticed that it's up for sale, so I don't know if that makes a difference at all either, but.
And I think at this time, since they're, it's been operating fine, I would recommend we consider removing it from the referral list. And if at some point in the future, there's a request, we can throw it back on.
Yeah, we can always put, so then that's actually a really good question. Has your department experienced any issues with parking related to any residents on, is that First Street? No, it's Second Street technically. On the
Second
regular.
Street,
Yeah, in that area. Have you guys heard anything?
No, I think this was the only complaint that we've had.
I guess I apologize, I don't know much about the complaint, and I don't know much about it because I haven't heard nothing about it, so.
Yeah, what it was, I guess to briefly brief you on it, is there was a request, there's a property owner just purchased or recently purchased an apartment complex that goes the length of the block on Second Street to Third Street. And there was a request for angled parking instead of side parking, just street parking, but actually maybe you'd get 2 or 3 more parking stalls there, but it would kind of go into the road, and there was some concern about who was going to pay for it and other things, and we had a committee meeting about it, and nothing really transpired after that. So if I missed anything on that,
no, I think we could take it off.
Yeah.
That has been quite a while.
I think it's been a year at least.
So we'll remove 6, 7, and 8.
Yep.
Okay.
And then with that, we're to,
I would like to,
Yeah.
sorry, I would like to discuss that ward cleanup program. And the main reason is because of obviously the complaints that we're getting with the refuse pickup. If this is an opportunity to resurrect that program, I don't know nothing about that program, but at least it would warrant a discussion in the future to say maybe we could select different wards, different sites if that's appropriate. And like I said, once again, I apologize because I don't know the details on it. I just thought if we're gonna
no, that's good.
roll that out, should we at least take a look and discuss that for the 2019 season?
No, and I don't know if it's inappropriate to actually kind of talk about that, the question, because didn't ward number 1 have a ward cleanup at one time?
Mhm.
What were
A few years ago.
some of the challenges? That was before my time.
I heard it was pretty successful, if I remember right.
Successful, I think, but yeah, I think from what I was heard and been told, that they had a lot of,
Tires and
stuff
electronics.
brought in from outside,
Yeah,
that the tires is one,
yeah.
to get rid of, but,
Well, I can put this, you know, on the agenda for next month. I can make sure that Alderperson Kellogg is aware of it. And we can discuss it in detail.
yep, that is Ward 1. It's been a few years though.
Anything else on the referral list?
Not for me.
Just real quick, I guess it's not on the referral list, but as far as the traffic monitoring, or what is going on at the corner of Lincoln and the Expressway? I've seen a new traffic light get put on there. Just if anybody else is listening at home for more informational purposes.
So Baynard Electric and TAPCO, they're a signal supplier and programming type company. They're swapping out some equipment, making some improvements there. The most notable improvements will be the flashing yellow left turns on the expressway. So going east and west, when you get to that intersection in the left turn lanes, there'll be a left turn phase for both movements, and there'll be flashing yellow arrows. And then for southbound on Lincoln, they'll have a left turn phase. So they'll get a green arrow. It won't be flashing. It'll just be a standard green left turn phase where that movement can clear out of there. So people coming from, say, Quick Trip or coming up from the hospital and traveling south to the expressway, they'll get green time, exclusive green time to get through that intersection.
So only southbound is gonna get that extra arrow time?
Just southbound at this point. The detriment to the operations of the intersection to also have northbound protective left turn phasing.
There's just so much traffic each
Yeah,
time.
there just wasn't enough time and enough room to do that. And so that phase was held off because it was less conducive to the operations.
What is a preliminary, I guess, idea of redoing that intersection? Obviously, when Quick Trip came in, there was, Quick Trip's gonna pay for a portion of that, or if they've already paid, or something like that, whatever the developer's agreement is. But and my question is more, how much do we have the ability to design that, and how much state influence or state approval process is there for that?
So there wasn't any state approval needed for it.
Okay.
The signals are owned and operated by the city. I would say the caveat to that is the design manuals and stuff that the state has and that other organizations professionally have that we would want to follow.
Yeah. But if we deemed something that's beneficial locally, we can do it as long as it falls within, like you said, the whatever the guidelines are,
Yep.
road building
Yep,
guidelines.
that's correct.
Well, what would that do with the future of the expressway?
Good question.
I mean, I don't know what kind of utilities we have underneath that intersection, but I would see it, obviously with looking at possibly state aiding that expressway in the future, right? That we would be looking to do that. I mean, we're basically not doing the maintenance repairs to the expressway and A Street, if I remember that conversation.
So we're looking to partner with the state in the major rehabilitation efforts. The regular maintenance activities, the state just participates by helping fund our connecting highway program. There's a formula for that. And so we do get some state aid every year to assist the city in those endeavors. But a major project such as resurfacing 8th Street or resurfacing or overlaying the expressway, I don't recollect what the thresholds are, but there's a threshold for which the state would generally either approve or participate in those activities.
So for instance, or just a point of clarification, the traffic signals, they're owned and operated by the city for maintenance and reconstruction of the expressway itself. there is a distinction there with the connecting highway agreement that we have with the state. I don't know what it is for concrete, but for asphalt, the threshold is a 2-inch overlay. So if you were, if the maintenance required or the rehabilitation required to preempted a 2-inch overlay or beyond, that would be a DOT project. You would have to have their blessing, their involvement.
I apologize. I thought you were talking about the reconstruction of that intersection.
Well, yeah,
Right.
like the right turn lane, if there is gonna be a proposed right turn lane from westbound to northbound or anything like that, you know. But I know because I go through that intersection 3 or 4 times a day, and well, I try and I go around as much as I possibly, because I'm actually pleasantly surprised that there isn't as many accidents that as there is, especially coming up on the hill, you know, traffic going highway speed. One real quick question, and that's all I got. On heading into town on Highway 54, coming in where 54 is going north and south, right by Home Depot, where it jogs onto the expressway. On that corner, there used to be a sign that said no right turn from the left lane. And then I think that there's another location on 2nd Avenue. If it was eastbound on the Riverview Expressway going toward Port Edwards, there was also a sign that says no turn period on red light. I think that those are removed, whatever, because I know it didn't come through this committee. What happened with that?
I read it somewhere.
Yeah, so it was a work order issued by the engineering department. The regulations, it was a state law that required the initial installation of those signs. That has, I don't know when, not all that recently, I mean, it's been a number of years already, I think, been repealed. And with certain, I guess, guidance principles, you know, if you remove the sign, is it still safe? You know, what are the traffic patterns of professional judgment? Those things being in place and being reviewed, those signs aren't necessary. So just from a traffic flow standpoint, those two are removed. There's still no turn on red at East Street.
On the express, okay.
Yeah, that's something we'll continue to monitor, but for the time being, we didn't feel that was appropriate yet.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
That's all I got.
Then item 8, oops, go ahead, Lee. No,
Sorry.
before we do,
I have received a phone call about public safety consideration, and I think it might have to do with, and I would like to get with you and Mr. Terry, if we need to get this on the next agenda in a closed session, or not.
Yeah, the closed sessions are hard. You almost need an exemption for a closed
It's
session.
very specific, narrow guidelines for
I
the closed session.
completely understand, and that's why I wanted to talk to you guys before, but I just want to let you know that there's an issue that came up last night that I received a phone call about.
Yeah, just send us an email or something describing what the issue is, and
In the meantime, what you can do is do a Google search for closed sessions Wisconsin, and it'll have 19.85 A, B, C, D, and you can actually look at all the different exemptions. But technically, under state law, open meetings take precedent over everything because it's the public is who we're having the meeting for. So you can only exempt it.
I believe the reason I preempted the possible closed session is for consideration of compensation for public safety.
That could be, depending upon how it is.
I know, and that's why I wanted to bring it up, but it's something we can discuss.
But yeah, it'd be, you know, yeah.
okay, just let us know the details. We can always run it past Sue.
with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I second.
Motion second to adjourn. Committee, all in favor, respond by aye. Aye, opposed, ayes have it. Adjourned at 7:30.
Geez.
Thank you.